is hosted by His Excellency President Nyusi of Mozambique and will focus on the important role of the nation's hydropower and the role it plays in driving energy transition in Mozambique and Southern Africa, including the opportunity for 5 gigawatts of new hydropower along the Zambezi River. His Excellency will be joined by a distinguished panel, including President Adesina of the African Development Bank, Mr. Blair, the Executive Chairman of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, Mr. Duke, U.S. Deputy Special Envoy for Climate, Ms. Duarte, CEO of the Climate Investment Fund, and we're very happy to also be joined by Ms. Ogunbiyi, CEO for Sustainable Energy for All, who will be moderating today's proceedings. It's now my honor to invite His Excellency President Nyusi to tell us more about Mozambique and this wonderful opportunity.
I'll get out of your way because it's too fast.
Please try to use your translation. Signora Akinwumi, Adesina, Presidente do Banco Africano de Desenvolvimento, caro amigo Tony Blair, Presidente do Instituto para a Mudança Global, Sr. John Kelly, especial enviado de Assuntos Climáticos do Presidente dos Estados Unidos, que devia estar conosco, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, distintos convidados, boa tarde. Antes de tudo, quero agradecer a presença de todos que nos honram, respondendo ao nosso convite para estarmos neste ato importante, à margem da COP27, assuntos paralelos e que estamos aqui abertos para partilharmos a nossa experiência e não só ouvirmos quais são as preocupações da humanidade, digo, em torno das mudanças climáticas. É com muita alegria que participo nesta conferência para um debate que se espera profícuo sobre a transição energética e o papel da energia hídrica para o contexto específico de Moçambique, que se insere na região da África Austral. O tema da transição energética assume uma relevância inegável em razão dos efeitos causados pelo consumo de energias fósseis, nomeadamente as emissões de carbono, com impacto sobre o aquecimento global e consequentes alterações de padrões climáticos de uma forma recorrente. No contexto atual, porém, gostaria de sublinhar 4 aspectos fundamentais. O primeiro reporta-se à insustentabilidade ao longo prazo do padrão de consumo energético que depende em larga medida de combustíveis fósseis e não renováveis. O segundo, algumas das reservas convencionais das energias fósseis estão concentradas em determinadas geografias suscetíveis à instabilidade, provocando de uma forma recorrente a volatilidade dos preços e a subsequente insegurança energética. O terceiro refere-se ao fato de que grande parte das emissões de carbono são provenientes dos países mais industrializados, o que revela um desequilíbrio entre os países mais desenvolvidos e grupo de países menos industrializados, com realce para os países da África subsaariana. E o quarto, o fato de que as grandes empresas, nominadas Royal Media, terem estabelecido metas ambiciosas no sentido de redução da intensidade das suas emissões, o que deverá implicar desinvestimentos em campos de fase de maturidade e menos investimentos em pesquisa e produção de combustíveis fósseis, tendo implicações no desenvolvimento econômico dos países com grande potencial de reservas de gás e petróleo. Assim, estamos perante uma realidade que coloca desafios, mas também oportunidades reais para muitos países, e Moçambique em particular pelas razões seguintes. 1. Por ter matriz energética diversificada, onde a energia hídrica representa 77% da geração atual do mercado interno, sendo um dos fornecedores de energia aos países vizinhos da região da África Austral. Neste sentido, tendo em conta o potencial hídrico, o país deverá posicionar-se na região como grande produtor de energia limpa em substituição das outras fontes como o gasóleo e o carvão. 2. Por possuir reservas de cerca de 180 TCF de gás natural com projetos em desenvolvimento, cujos investimentos poderão rondar os 50 mil milhões de dólares americanos, com efeitos nacionais transformais sobre a economia. Tendo em consideração que o fornecimento de energia solar é internamente por depender, é intermitente por depender das condições climatéricas, o gás, sendo menos poluente, deverá ser considerado a fonte de energia durante o período de transição, o que pode colocar Moçambique num lugar privilegiado para a diversificação das fontes energéticas no mercado global. 3. Por ser vulnerável aos efeitos das mudanças climáticas, sendo de salientar os eventos extremos de 2019, nomeadamente os ciclones tropicais Idai e Kenneth, que destruíram infraestruturas com perdas estimadas em 3,2 mil milhões de dólares americanos. Distintos convidados, a capacidade de Moçambique gerar energia hídrica é a maior da África Austral, estimada em 15,0 gigawatts. E deste potencial, podemos destacar os projetos de Mpandakua, com 1.500 megawatts, Mpandakua Norte, com 900 megawatts, Kaora Bassa Norte, com 1.245 megawatts, Lupata, com 650 megawatts, Boroma, com 200 megawatts e Xemba, com 600 megawatts. Então, estou aqui a falar apenas daquilo que é potencial para explorar e provável. Na perspectiva de explorar o máximo o nosso potencial hidroelétrico ao longo do rio Zambeze, estamos numa fase avançada de desenvolvimento do projeto hidroelétrico de Mpandakua, com a capacidade, como disse, de 1,5 gigawatts de mil. Este empreendimento exigirá um investimento estimado de 4,7 mil milhões de dólares americanos, incluindo a linha de transporte de energia de alta tensão, que irá potenciar a exploração de energia para a região. Através da linha de transmissão e infraestrutura para a África do Sul, Zimbábue, a linha Moçambique-Malawi, em construção já, e a potencial perspectiva de ligação Moçambique-Zâmbia, Moçambique-Tanzânia, podemos suprir as necessidades energéticas regionais a menores custos, e estamos cada vez cientes que sinergias interregionais irão colmatar o déficit energético, o que acelera a integração econômica regional, com efeitos positivos para a geração de empregos e a balança comercial. Eu quero aqui sublinhar uma coisa: em Moçambique nós não temos nenhuma central de carvão, portanto, muito menos falamos de fechar ou não fechar, porque não há nada para fechar senão energias hídricas, que são energias limpas. O desafio do volume e instrumentos de mitigação de riscos relativos ao financiamento, outro aspecto crítico em relação à região de África Austral, decorre da necessidade de um plano integrado e organizado para o desenvolvimento de infraestruturas energéticas. Uma nota a destacar é que Moçambique tem um papel fundamental na transição energética na região e no mundo. Através da geração, como disse, em Bandancua e Cabora Bassa, o país poderá elevar a quase 25,2 milhões de toneladas de redução de carbono para o ano, apenas com essas duas hidros que me refiro, substituindo a energia do carvão no Southern African Power Pool, bem como facilitar uma maior penetração das energias renováveis. No caso específico do carbono, Moçambique possui vastas áreas de florestas, algumas delas como reservas ou zonas protegidas, incluindo arquipélagos, o que representa um contributo significativo na captura de carbono, sendo um potencial ativo financeiro e capitalizar os mercados de carbono. Eu acabo, aliás, devia ter iniciado por isso, pedir desculpas por termos levado um pequeno tempo de atraso. Acabamos de lançar mais uma iniciativa em Moçambique, que é a defesa ou a proteção das florestas dos miombos, que isso aqui é a floresta tropical maior do mundo que existe e abrange muitos países da África Austral, que é o Zimbábue, Botsuana, Moçambique, Zâmbia, Tanzânia, até vai a Angola. Portanto, esta é mais uma iniciativa do meu país em ganhar o espaço, neste caso, e apesar do potencial que acabamos de fazer referência em relação a Moçambique, colocam-se outros desafios relativos aos compromissos de financiamento de projetos hídricos de grande envergadura, como é o caso de Mpandancua. E eu acredito que este encontro vai ajudar muito para explicarmos primeiro o que é Mpandancua, o que é preciso fazer em Mpandancua, e os nossos amigos da iniciativa aqui, Blair, conhecem bem o projeto e vai ser responsável também para levar a todo mundo o que se fala, o que se faz em torno disso, assim como para a exploração econômica da energia solar. Até o momento, para além de pequenos sistemas, construímos 2 empreendimentos maiores de geração de energia solar, em Mocuba, na província de Zambeze, que é no centro do país, e em Metoro, na província de Cabo Delgado, com capacidade de 40 megawatts cada central. Contudo, orgulha-nos também partilhar a iniciativa presidencial por mim lançada em Moçambique, denominada Energia para Todos, que visa o alcance dos Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável definidos na Agenda 2030 das Nações Unidas, iluminando todas as 364 sedes dos postos administrativos até 2024, depois de termos concluído com sucesso em 2019 a iluminação de 154 sedes distritais. Termino esta provocação do debate, simplesmente quis situar para provocar a discussão e o debate, enfatizando a nossa crença no papel de Moçambique na transição para uma matriz energética mais limpa, pela sua experiência, primeiro, temos a experiência e é bem reconhecida internacional, mas também pelo potencial de geração e fornecimento de energia hídrica aos países vizinhos através da bacia de Zambeze, pelas infraestruturas de transporte erguidas, e aqui tenho o prazer o nosso amigo Akinwumi, que é do Banco Africano, que tem suportado essas iniciativas de integração regional e fundamentalmente para as reservas de gás também, que comercialmente provadas para o período de transição de energia, e sobre isso, se for preciso, poderemos desenvolver mais. Mais uma vez, quero agradecer a vossa presença e também a co-organização deste evento. Estou pronto e aberto para continuarmos a discutir. Muito obrigado a todos.
Very much, Your Excellency, for those wonderful remarks. It's great to see Mozambique is really the beacon for clean energy in Southern Africa. The efforts that you're putting in place to reduce carbon and your very, very ambitious project pipeline that you discussed with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, thanks for joining us today with this distinguished panel. Because of the time constraint, I'm going to jump straight into the questions, if you don't mind, because we have a lot to discuss with this amazing panel we have today. The first question I would like to point us to Sir Tony Blair. The global discussion on energy transition tends to focus on countries that are high emitting, mostly countries that use coal. Generally, there's less attention paid for countries that have low emissions. What are your views on that?
Thank you very much. Is this, you can hear? Right, great. So thank you, Damilola. Thank you, Mr. President, for your excellent address, and it's a great pleasure to be here with such a distinguished panel. So let me answer this briefly in this way. One of the reasons why my institute works with governments like the government of Mozambique and works indeed with the Africa Development Bank under President Adesina's leadership is because we will not deal with climate change unless we have practical plans to get from where we are to where we need to be. And those practical plans have got to encompass at least two different groups of nations. One is a group of nations that are developing but already have substantial power generation, usually fossil fuel power generation. So you can be thinking Indonesia and India, China, and so on. A second group in the developing world, though, are those countries that have yet to develop. Right? So they're going to be making huge strides forward. They have to do that in order to give their people the life chances they need. And they're not energy transitioning, right? They're about getting energy into their country because they don't have that energy now. And Mozambique's is a classic country with the following challenge. It has got fossil fuel reserves, very substantial fossil fuel reserves. Now, if we want them to use also their potential for renewable and clean energy, then we've got to help them do that. We can't just expect them to be in a position where they don't have the ability to develop. So, right now, if you take the 81 most energy poor countries, they're responsible for about 8% of emissions, very low. But if you fast forward to 2050, those countries, if things don't change, will be responsible for 75% of emissions. So we have to make sure that we're in a position to allow countries like Mozambique to develop with clean energy. But that can't happen unless they have partners that are prepared to help them get there. And that's not just the international financial institutions, it's the private sector, and it's in particular the large amount of capital that's available for investment if we can get investable projects. And the important thing about this meeting is that in the Zambezi River project, this Cascade project, we have the opportunity to make a huge difference to the energy profile of Southern Africa, which at the moment, through South Africa, is mainly reliant on coal. We have an opportunity to change that, and change that in a fundamental way, with many gigawatts of power available through hydropower, but it can only happen through a partnership. It needs the Mozambique government, it needs the international financial institutions, and it needs private sector investment. And that's the purpose of the meeting today, is to say to those people that have got the capacity and ability to influence these decisions, the government's ready to work with you, its partners are ready to work with you, but we need your help in order to make this practical plan happen. Thank you.
Tony, I hope everyone can hear me. One of the key things you said was that the need to develop. One of the things we're hearing around, and what African countries have heard for a long time, that climate development and energy go hand in hand. One of the pioneers of making sure Africa develops is Dr. Adesina here, whose institution's job is to make sure Africa is not left behind, and the finance around the large-scale projects that you have been working on. In your endeavors as a multilateral development bank, such as AFDB, and the critical role it plays for these countries, where do you see the challenges, or where do you also see the opportunities that this energy transition pathway brings?
We have the power transition bill. Now, Mr. President, thank you very much for inviting us to this conversation. It's good to see you, Prime Minister Blair, and all the colleagues. First is this. We have to be realistic. When we say transition, we have to understand that if you plant a seed, that seed has to grow first. It comes out of the ground, and then it becomes a tall tree. You can bend left or you can bend right. You can't have energy transition when you have zero energy. So the first point is Africa needs energy, period. And to have that energy, Africa has tremendous amounts of resources to do so. One, you take a look at the solar. God is good to Africa. We have about 10 terawatts of solar potential. We have 350 gigawatts of hydro potential. The President was talking about some of that here, and Prime Minister was also talking about that. We have a 115 gigawatts for even wind, and geothermal about 15 gigawatts. So almost 45% of all the world's renewable energy resources are here. So, second point, we must maximize and optimize all the renewable energy we have. And that's why for us at the African Development Bank, today, 83% of all of our investment in energy is in renewable energy. And when I was elected president, we were very, very low. We were only about 9%. And look at where we are today. So I'm very bold about renewable energy. But you know, we have a saying in my language. It says the eye that cries must see at the same time. And what I mean by that is that it is not ideology that powers economy. It's pragmatism that powers economy. You want to learn about that? Just look at what happened in Europe with the war.
No, that's just
And you find suddenly the same countries are talking about net zero transition and so on, going back to coal. That's a reverse transition.
if you go there.
Going back to lignite, which is even the worst form of coal. What I mean by this is this. We must, Mr. President was saying it, realize that there's issue of access to energy, issue of price of energy, affordability, security of energy, and the stability of the grid system. Africa has to industrialize. My goodness. We're tired of being poor. We're not going to be, suddenly, the poverty museum of the world, that if you're looking at what not to do, you point to Africa and say, look at them over there. No. Africa must industrialize, and it cannot industrialize unless it has a stable grid system. And that's what Tony was talking about, that we must therefore look at the role of gas in our energy mix. We must have gas as a fundamental part of that. We supported Mozambique, Mr. President, to have the $24 billion investment in that project at the Africa Investment Forum. We are glad, despite all the challenges, that is going on. But people always ask the question, if you use gas, it means that you are contributing to global emissions. Oh, really? In the case of Africa, it's different. 98% of Africa's energy emissions is not coming from the energy sector. It is coming from fuel, charcoal, and people are using that. So if there is any transition we need to make, is to make a transition from fuel, charcoal, even to gas. That's a good transition. And I can tell you on the numbers, you know this yourself. If today, Mr. President, Africa was to use all of its gas, to use gas to power, you know how much it will have contributed to global greenhouse gas carbon emissions? 0.67%. 0.67%. 0.67%. So, Africa must be given the headroom to develop. Africa should not have its high tide on its back and be asked to swim breaststroke in the development process. We are doing everything we are doing for renewable energy, but there is no country in the world, not one, that its economy only using renewable because it is not. It's highly durable. Therefore, we must be realistic. We cannot be ideological about this particular issue. So all I just want to say is that, last now I say, sometimes when people say ethnic transition, if you're like me, I like to go on vacation with the cruise. You go, on this cruise ship, we call them cruise ships. If you go on a cruise ship, you see all these big cruise ships, you leave your room, you go from there, you play bowling, and you leave your room, you eat, everything is stable. That is how energy transition looks like for developed countries. 100% access to electricity, you change from this to this, or you're stable. Now, for Africa, it is like a small rickety boat on the Mediterranean, where you're pulling this way, you're pulling this way. If you flip like this, you're going to tumble. And so all Africa wants to do is just allow us to move from being a rickety boat to just a basic boat. We don't want to be a cruise ship. And so give us room. Give us room.
Thank you so much, Adesina, for that very important bit, and that was again including the development aspect. One of the things you said that was really important was the change from fossil, from wood-based energy, which is what we use now, which causes massive deforestation, which actually affects about 1 million lives every single year. So when we talk about this crisis, and executives said and talk about the switch, we also talk about saving people's lives. And the quicker we save people's lives, the better for everybody. So I'm going to now move on to you, Mr. Yu, U.S. Deputy Special Envoy for Climate. The U.S. has been instrumental in the Gen 2 program, the Just Energy Transition programs around the world. One particular example is the one in South Africa. Could you share with us some of the lessons learned that we can utilize for places like Mozambique?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership on this hydro development and the work that you're doing on advancing renewables as the first answer, but not necessarily the only answer to ensuring energy access and industrialization in Africa. And I think this first set of interventions are very clear from Prime Minister Blair and from you, sir, is that this is really something that cannot be kind of one-size-fits-all set of solutions. So we need to consider the context of looking at a just energy transition partnership. And in the case of a country like Mozambique, clearly there's an imperative to start with the principle of powering growth, powering economic opportunity, and making sure that there is energy access for all, and that there are opportunities to shift away from destructive use of biomass for cooking towards clean LPG or electric cooking and other kinds of solutions that are fundamental for economic development. In the case, as Prime Minister Blair indicated, in the case of a country like Indonesia or Vietnam, it's a different starting point. And so in those contexts where we are pursuing these just energy transition partnerships, in the case of Indonesia, for example, they have considerable overcapacity of coal power generation right now. It's a very different context. And so we're working there to ensure that we get movement from coal to renewables, and that involves a whole set of challenges and opportunities that are distinct. In the case of Vietnam, it's a similar effort. In the case of Mozambique, or another country in South Africa that's in an earlier stage of development, we have to start with that imperative to ensure that we're delivering economic growth and electricity for sale. But what is in common across all of these efforts is that the opportunity from renewables is extraordinary. In particular, in Southern Africa, but really globally, you see that the price point, the cost for renewable electrons, in most cases now, is cheaper than what you can get from fossil electricity. And so it's not to say that it is only a question of renewables, but it is a renewables first opportunity for, I think, almost every country now as they move forward. So that's one lesson learned that we see across the board. Renewables are the place to start and the backbone of powering any economy today, given how cheap the technologies have become, including with short duration storage as part of what can be done. I think another opportunity that I would indicate is that if you're going to realize that renewables investment, it is crucial to make sure that the policy context is there, because this cannot be done in any country at the scale and pace required with just public investment. One must mobilize private capital as part of what is going to make the difference at the scale and pace required. And for that to happen, you need the right policy conditions to be put in place. And so Mozambique's new electricity law, which the president signed earlier this year, is an example of what can be helpful in providing that kind of clarity for investors. I'll just note one more lesson learned from the emerging Just Energy Transition Partnership projects, including, of course, the South Africa example, where we are thrilled that there is now an investment plan in place, and the United States looks forward to working to realize that vision from President Ramaphosa and scale investment as quickly as possible in South Africa. One more lesson that we see especially in the South Africa case, but it applies everywhere, is that you do need to have early and extensive consultation across all of society in order to succeed in things like the comprehensive transmission lines that are needed to tie this all together, and in order to have the social license to proceed. And of course, part of what we try to do with the Just Energy Transition Partnership efforts is to ensure that we've also paid attention to what's happening with worker transitions in these contexts. And so every case is unique, but some lessons are renewables are the backbone of the solution. Get the policies right to drive the private capital, and make sure you're doing the consultations to ensure that everything stays on a positive track in terms of the social license to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear your messages on policy and working alongside governments to develop their own plan. I'm now going to move swiftly along to Mafalda. She is the CEO of the Climate Investment Fund. And as we all know, the Climate Investment Funds are probably one of the first and largest active and quite dynamic climate finance mechanisms. Last week, I believe you launched or you announced your 1 billion funding to support energy transitions in South Africa and Indonesia. Again, these are large economies called back, and we understand the reasons why. But what opportunities do you see that we can bring to countries like Mozambique as we move forward using mechanisms and existing programs from the Climate Investment Fund?
Thank you very much, Damilola, and thank you to the government of Mozambique and other organizers here. I'm a bit torn because now I have to choose between my mother tongue and my adopted language, because I'm actually Portuguese speaking, but I will go with my adopted language. So actually, we have been a partner of Mozambique for quite a number of years. We certainly agree with the points that have been made by Prime Minister Tony Blair, by His Excellency the President of Mozambique. Mozambique has a very large potential. In fact, is a top country in terms of power generation potential in Southern Africa, and across different resources, as His Excellency pointed as well: hydro, solar, wind. That has been it's quite untapped. So certainly that's a critical point. And recognizing that, we are actually supporting Mozambique. His Excellency mentioned the Mokuba project, the first utility-scale solar power project in the country as a PPP, as a public-private partnership. We are financing that first investment. Our partnership with Mozambique extends beyond the energy. We have investments also in resilience in Gaza province and Sofala. some of which I have actually visited 3 or 4 years ago. And we have a forest. We have forest programs as well. The Miomba forest that His Excellency also mentioned, we also have an investment in Mozambique in that area. So we have a long-standing partnership with Mozambique through the African Development Bank and through the World Bank group as well. And we see opportunities, of course, to partner with us. In fact, tomorrow I will be actually announcing that Mozambique is to become one of the partners, one of the countries that will benefit from our new nature program. So investments in the Zambezi River in the region. We are also exploring storage investments in Mozambique. There's potential for hydro pump storage and floating solar. These are opportunities that we are also looking into. And there are other opportunities that Mozambique, that we can partner with Mozambique on. And I can speak a little bit more on that. We have been a key partner in the Just Energy Transition Partnerships. The South Africa one, as you, Damilola, rightly pointed out just last week. We approved our $500 million investment plan in partnership again with the African Development Bank and the World Bank Group. I think one of the very interesting aspects of this partnership, which are now being talked about as potentially a model and a replicable model for other countries as well. So it doesn't just have to apply to energy transition. I think what is important in terms of these partnerships is that a group of countries come together, developed countries with, in this case, South Africa, but other countries as well, and they commit to be partners over the medium to long term and bring the capital and be partners in terms of bringing the finance, but also bringing, basically bringing about the change in the policy environment that is necessary, working together towards that, and bringing the capital, the different parts of the capital spectrum that are necessary. So I think that is, as I said, it's a model, it's an interesting model that we are experimenting with, and in terms of its principles, they can be applied in different countries. In terms of energy access, for example, we're talking about here how much there's a lack of energy access in the continent, in Africa, in many countries in Africa. So I wanted to reiterate this point. I think there are certain key ingredients in these partnerships, and it's this underpinning these principles that underpin these partnerships that are important to try to replicate.
Thank you so much, and it's great to see that you're announcing your continued partnership with Mozambique. I'm now going to move on very, very quickly because we don't have much time at all, and His Excellency still has to give us the final word. I'm going to move on to Sir Tony Blair. With the vast experience that the Tony Blair Institute has in kind of supporting African countries, how do you see yourself supporting the development of energy transition plans and help mobilizing climate finance for a country like Mozambique?
Okay, well, I know we're very short on time now. Just first of all, I want to say how much I love what President Adesina said, and particularly about what he said about gas, which I think is realistic and correct. And also, all of this depends on having practical plans, and that is, what I would really like to see about the whole climate debate is that it moves from expressions of the problem to things that you can describe as practical solutions. And the role of organizations like my institute is to work with governments like the government and president of Mozambique in order to provide those practical solutions. Now, this Zambezi River project, that is one clear example, because the bid that is now up for competitive tender, which is the Mafalda part of it, 1.5 gigawatts, That is going to be a dramatically important project. It is in good order. The government of Mozambique had put the structure together in the right way. The finance minister, Tenella, and Carlos Jung, who's the manager of the project, they've done an excellent job. What they now need is to access that climate finance, because there's going to be a gap between the energy price, if they simply went for the cheapest option, and what that option will be through Mafalda and Nyusi. So, for example, the European sounds $90 a ton. I think the CEO is the price that, you know, there's got to be mechanisms that can be used in order to get that finance in. And this is going to be the test for the international community. If a government has a good project, it's put it in order, it's a project that can be invested in, are the mechanisms then there for the transfer of that finance to make it happen? Because to end on this point, to emphasize again what I think all of the speakers have said, Africa is going to develop, should develop, has the right to develop, and no one's going to stop it developing. So the only question is, what is going to be the energy that powers that development? And that's our challenge. It's a practical challenge, and we should start working on it now.
Okay, Dr. President of the African Development Bank. This is a bit of a different question, because normally people ask you, what can you give them? I'm going to ask a different question. What does institutions like the African Development Bank need to feed the growing demand of African countries who really have already set their ambition and they want to do energy transition? What do you need to be able to support these countries?
Thank you very much, Damilola. First and foremost is that I think one thing that is very scarce is money to actually do project development. Because at the end of the day, it's not so much that there's caps and all that there. It's where the bankable projects. And so I think first and foremost that we will actually need a lot of grant money to support countries to develop their projects. I mean, we've been contacted, we're working closely with the government of Mozambique here in an advisory capacity to help them structure this particular project, and also the engagement with South Africa and also with ESCOM and also the EDM and so on. But we do need project preparation funds, and it's very scarce money to have. But I can tell anybody listening to us that project preparation money actually delivers. We have at the bank something called the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility. We use only $28 million for project preparation facility, that allowed us to actually finance $26 billion worth of projects. So you can see the leverage right there. And we have Africa 50, of course, that is also doing that. So that's one area we need money. The second one is that when we talk about energy transition, and I want to come back to the issue of realism. If you take the case of South Africa, and I think Rick was mentioning that was South Africa, and also we enjoy the partnership with the Climate Fund, Investment Fund on this one. The issue is how much will it really take? It's great to have $8.5 billion from the G7 countries, fantastic. But our own assessment is that South Africa will need at least $41 billion for that transition to happen. If you add to it all the other things they need to do, it might go even up to $90 billion. And so how do you get to $41 billion is the big question. Because if you want to transition and you're standing on a cliff and somebody's asking you to jump, if you jump, you better have a parachute. Otherwise, you're going to transition into something else. So I want to make sure that three things. First, there's significant amount of money for grants. Grant money is much more needed. Secondly, we need blended finance facilities to be able to do that. Third, a lot of money to de-risk these projects. And you need a financial model, a business model that allows you to leverage that money. What we have come up with, Tony and Mr. President, is a framework in which we can use some of those monies to actually create a special purpose vehicle. And that special purpose vehicle will become a rated, AAA rated special purpose vehicle that we can use to raise money on the capital market to raise the entire $41 billion without debt by issuing zero coupons to do that. So we've got to really be pragmatic, look at what works. Don't commit to things that may not eventually deliver it. The business model of leverage works. So in closing, all I'm just saying is, if you can tell John Kerry, we need monies for grants, we need more concessional financing, we need the risking facility to be able to have a pool of capital. For South Africa and others, including other countries, we think we will need about maybe $11 billion or $12 billion in a special purpose vehicle that can run a zero coupon and raise $41 billion without sweat. So I think that this is where I would say we need to have something from. And I'll just close on this. Sometimes when you look at countries, I feel bad in terms of not getting enough resources that they need. And I think the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, was saying it. We've got to change that. We cannot keep having megawatts of talk that leads to make 0 megawatts of financing. So we got to make sure that we make our megawatts of talk lead to megawatts of financing for countries to make a transition. Otherwise, you cannot have transition with zero financing.
So much, and thank you for the practical steps of what is needed and the amount is needed to really make sure this transition works. We only have about 3 minutes left, and I'd like to give the last word to His Excellency, President of Mozambique, just to explain kind of what is your vision and your plan for your energy transition, Your Excellency, in Mozambique.
Thank you. I will help you to manage your time. Bom, primeiro, once again, go to the phone. Primeiro, dizer o seguinte, que Moçambique não é um país que está a poluir. Moçambique tem todo tipo de recursos, até que aqueles que podem poluir, incluindo o carvão. É o maior produtor do carvão da África e pode ser a qualquer momento do mundo, e carvão de qualidade. Mas não temos nenhuma central, como eu acabei dizendo. Os sábios, como Arquimedes, até o Newton, há uma linguagem que até dizem: se me der ponto de apoio, posso suspender o mundo. O que Moçambique quer é só um ponto de apoio para suspender o mundo. Suspender o mundo, o que significa? É livrar o mundo de poluições. Não só dentro de Moçambique, mas dentro do continente e dentro do mundo. Nós não podemos de nenhuma forma falar de energias limpas sem passar por uma transição, quando esta oportunidade nos permite. No passado, poluímos muito com carvão, com combustíveis, etc. Mas mesmo na Europa já está a considerar o gás como energia verde. Então nós temos que começar a embarcar nisso para podermos gradualmente avançar para o realismo. Com a situação agora entre Ucrânia e Rússia, há muita escassez de tudo, incluindo a comida. A comida produz-se com energia. E se nós dissermos, ok, vamos ficar energia limpa, não vamos comer, não vamos ter a saúde, porque para poder fazer saúde precisa de energia, não vamos pôr pessoas a estudar para ter conhecimentos, para poder transformar essa energia também. Então, praticamente, vamos congestionar, vamos bloquear o desenvolvimento. Não há mais nada que resta se não trabalharmos, por um lado, melhorando as tecnologias de produção de energia, para que essa poluição seja menos. Por outro lado, é dar oportunidade para esses países, como dizia meu amigo aqui, não estamos para fazer museus de recursos minerais, mas são para ser usados, e eu acredito que esta é a nossa visão. Vamos para a energia de transição, neste caso, o gás, e estamos prontos para dar a nossa contribuição, mas fica a mensagem aí. Há coisas, financiamento é preciso financiar esta transição, pode ser por investimentos, pode ser até através de doações, que alguns fazem, doações no âmbito de redução de poluição a nível mundial. Como disse, iria facilitar o seu trabalho, porque sei que tem pouco tempo. Mais uma vez agradecer a presença de todos, a coorganização, a presença de todos que estão nos assistir virtualmente e deixar a mensagem clara. Sim, vamos transitar para a energia limpa, mas também é preciso não poluir. Não é só a energia que está a fazer a poluição. A destruição da natureza até faz muito mais do que as energias, como dissemos. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. If I could ask the